Hello everyone, I have returned from my 2-week trip to Europe, in case you've been wondering where all my videos have been, and yeah, I'm back. Today, I would like to just go over some of the recent happenings in the community and give some takes on what has gone on over the past couple of weeks, since I have not been around. We're going to start with the Loreley Helm nerf. Recently, Loreley's restoration power has received a nerf, no longer giving 2 stacks of restoration, now only giving 1. This was to reduce its healing power. Most people who watch this channel with any regularity should not be surprised to hear that I overwhelmingly agree with this nerf. This exotic, combined with Solar 3.0 and the resilience changes, effectively made Solar Titans immortal in most pieces of content. While I'm all for experimenting and finding crazy builds, this exotic was effectively the mod Protective Light, but dialed up to 11. Protective Light is a mod that used to automatically give 50% damage reduction when you lost your shields if you had charged with light, and was an auto-include in every endgame build. Protective Light now gives a whopping 10% reduction. Whenever Loreley procced, it gave you the most beneficial healing effect the game has ever seen for a pretty long duration. Not only that, but Titans are building resilience with this build, which means short class ability cooldowns, which is consumed when Loreley procs. Not only that, sunspots also give a boost to ability cooldowns, meaning you could have your class ability up every single time that this needed to proc. If this wasn't the case, if Titan class ability cooldowns were long enough that you would not proc it multiple times in a row that quickly, I would probably disagree a little bit with this nerf. But it's not. This helm removed any sort of risk in what I would say is 98% of content in the game, and being immortal is a bit too much, even for this game. I was doing a master duality with Danielle and Jez while they were very low level for a video, and I was still able to pretty much bring them to victory while being around 15 levels under while wearing this helm. This helm was ridiculous. It is now simply not as ridiculous. Is it terrible garbage? No, of course not, but something needed to be done about it, and I'm glad that Bungie is at least willing to show that they haven't completely abandoned the concept of death. Next, in I believe week 5 of the story, there was a quest step that required 50 champion kills in order to move to the next step, with Master Ketchcrash progressing this part much faster. One run of Master got you all the points you needed to complete the step. I think you got like 13 points for a champion. Normal Ketchcrash does not have champions, which means you needed to go find champions somewhere else. Expedition champions, I think, counted for 3 points, but, you know, good luck getting consistent champions in expeditions with random matchmaking. Apparently, this was a big deal, and I can kind of see both sides of the argument. On the one hand, if you are of level to handle something like Master Ketchcrash, I'd say within 20 levels of 1600, maybe 15, go find a quick LFG and just bang it out. You don't need to talk to anyone, you just need to equip some anti-champion mods, and that's it. It's not really that big of a deal. A quick search on a site or joining one of the big LFG Discord servers is not that big of a deal. Use the Destiny app's LFG. It's right there. It's not that hard. On the other hand, why is a quest step like this in the seasonal story quest? Something like kill 50 champions comes completely out of nowhere considering what other quest steps have looked like over the past few months. And if you're not very highly leveled, or you don't play actively, or you're still new to the game, good luck getting this step done in a normal amount of time. The seasonal story quest is not really the place I look to have a quest step like this, nor do I think it needs it at all. The weird part is that the following week, they did the exact thing that they should have done for week 5. They made a quest step that was either do 5 normal Ketchcrashes or do 1 master Ketchcrash to complete the step. Like, that's what it should have been from the start. I don't understand why Bungie would design it like the way that they did in week 5, and then the following week do it differently, but then also way better. I don't know. This doesn't seem to be an issue now since Bungie auto-completed it, so we're just kind of talking about nothing at this point. I would love to have an elitist take on this situation. I just don't really. Seasonal story mission is not where I look for intense quest completion requirements. I just want to get through whatever the setup is for the week, and then I want to get to the lore and the story and the dialogue and the cutscenes and all that stuff. I don't want to be stuck looking for champions to go kill or whatever for a couple hours. Just I want to see the story parts. So this brought up the topic of optional, match-made, higher difficulty seasonal activities, among other activities as well. My take on something like match-made, master seasonal activities is that if it were to exist, I would want it to be set up in a way to reduce frustration as much as possible. To me, reducing frustration would mean reducing the odds of finding someone via matchmaking who should just straight up not be in matchmaking for this kind of activity. Master Ketchcrash is 1600 power. If I were setting up matchmaking requirements, I would want the game to block people from under 1585 from joining. Maybe 1580, that's kind of pushing it. And I would want people to have at least 2 anti-champion mods equipped to guarantee all champions can be stunned by all players. Again, in matchmaking. Non-matchmade, do whatever you want. I don't care. That is how I would feel comfortable going into matchmaking for something like Master Ketchcrash. If you leave it wide open, I'm probably going to pass because all that's going to do is invite people who just have no idea what's going on whatsoever, super underleveled. That's going to make people mad, which is not really what you want. You want match-made activities to be mostly completed. The harder the difficulty of the content, the more limits I would like to see imposed in order to reduce frustration. Then, depending on how that first iteration goes, adapt from there. If it goes really smoothly, then you maybe open up the requirements a little bit more. If it goes really poorly, you tighten them up. There's no fail state in normal mode, but there is in Master, which is why I would want some limits on who could and could not join, although Bungie does make it pretty tough to fail. I am still very much anti-dungeon and raid matchmaking, unless it was done in the way that World of Warcraft does it, or at least did it when I was, playing it. I don't know if it's changed. Where Bungie essentially turns the dungeon or raid into the equivalent of a strike, and people can just mindlessly go through it without much issue, while also toning down the rewards to match the difficulty. However, I think something else Bungie doesn't really want with match-made activities is having things that are long in duration be match-made. Everything in the game that has matchmaking is designed to be completed in 10 to 15 minutes tops. Gambit, Crucible, Strike Playlist, seasonal content, Nightfalls, you name it, 10 to 15 minutes tops. I don't think Bungie wants to toss people into match-made content that takes a very long time to do. Now, you could point to guided games, and yes, that is something that is much longer than 10 to 15 minutes, but the bulk of the group is not formed via matchmaking, and also, guided games. Could something like a dungeon or raid matchmaking work with much stricter requirements? I think there's a chance. Sure, you need a microphone to be plugged in, you need to have a certain amount of clears of the content already, maybe you need to have the title, something along those lines. But free-for-all matchmaking for something like raids, I think people who claim that it would work are very overconfident in the community's collective ability. The game does not only consist of people on Reddit and Twitter and people on LFG sites. Speaking of raids, Master King's Fall released, and it looks like the exact same complaints are coming in compared to other Master content. I really don't want to have these conversations again, so instead I think I'm going to go reality check mode. First things first, people getting annoyed about more champions, increased health, the whole nine that comes with Master content, higher difficulty content. This is the norm. This should be expected now. I don't know how many more times I gotta come here and tell people that Bungie is not going to make new mechanics for Master Raids or Dungeons or GM Nightfalls. They said 4 years ago that they're not gonna do it. And let me tell you, that streak is still active. Give it up. They will never make new mechanics for hard mode raids. And again, as usual, I would love to be wrong on this at some point in the future. More champions, higher health. This is normal. This is all the same stuff that has always happened. If you were expecting different, I don't know what to tell you. It doesn't matter how much you like or hate it. This is what higher level difficulty content is and will be in Destiny for the foreseeable future. Every single time something comes out, we have this exact conversation. It is pretty clear that Bungie is not going to change this no matter how many times it is asked. Feel free to keep harping on them, but I am giving up on asking and giving feedback about this situation. It's just not gonna happen. Next up is incentives and loot, which continues to remain the exact same as it has for master raids. People want the master raid to be better loot-wise, incentive-wise, even XP-wise. Master raid loot has never been that good. The incentives have never been that good. Master raiding is for the love of the game. You go in once a week for 5 weeks and maybe grab a checkpoint, you get the challenges done, you get the title, and then you never come back. I ran 2 master raids right as I got back from my recent trip, and I got a 59 stat roll piece of armor from a challenge mode boss fight. Master raid, War Priest challenge mode, 59. For people who are already able to run the master raid without too much stress, the loot rewards are already irrelevant and have increasingly become more irrelevant the easier it becomes to get high stat roll armor from other sources. I don't care what stat is stat of the week for armor drops, it is irrelevant for the people already running the master raid, and it was from the start. Master raids drop adept weapons with multiple perks to select from. But with weapon crafting now a thing, that has lost some value as well, outside of adept mods, which I don't really value that highly in the grand scheme of the game. The swappable perks are not a game changer at all either. They're nice, but they're a side grade. Master Nightfalls are probably the best endgame farm available thanks to being able to farm exotics in a group, but you can still do that plenty well in Legend Lost sectors, although getting Ascendant Shards from Nightfalls is pretty nice and smooth. I've seen people request raid armor drop as Artifice armor. I don't think that would get me interested either, as I think Artifice armor is completely overrated. Most mod loadouts cost so much energy that having an extra slot feels meaningless when I'm not even able to use the main slots that I get in the first place. I'm definitely not going to say no if Bungie wants to do it, even though I'm pretty sure that they've said that they want master dungeons to have Artifice armor while raids have the weapons, but I just think it's overrated and or not very important. Historically, it has been near pointless to run master raids after you get the seal and the title because the rewards simply do not match the effort that goes into running master raids. Think about it. What would it take for people to want to go into master raids for more than just the title? Because clearly what we have now is not enough to get people to go do it. So what would it take? It would take power creep. It would take power creeping their game to get people to do it. Now, Bungie's no stranger to power creeping their game. We've had some of the largest steps of power creep over the past few months. But Bungie will never again power creep their game only for the elite. Because we did that already, and it caused some serious havoc on the game. They will power creep the game for the casual crowd in the form of Umbral engram decoding for high stat armor, or for everyone at the same time in the form of subclass 3.0, but they will never again have top tier players getting loot that is better than what the average player can acquire because they know what happens when they let that happen. You get Mountaintop, you get Recluse Not Forgotten, you get Weapons Sunsetting to try to rotate these ridiculous guns out of the game, because if you don't, you need to come up with something even better than those. Bungie does not want to go through that again. Instead, you're going to get some cosmetics. Here's a ship for 1 clear, here's a Sparrow for the challenges, here's a title and a pin that you can buy at the Bungie store. And you want to know the truth? We're lucky to even get that. We're lucky that Bungie is generous enough to drop those items on Triumphs instead of in the Eververse store, and that's only because people made a big stink about it a couple of years ago for Pit of Heresy, where Eververse was selling items that looked like they should have been rewarded from gameplay. We're lucky that master rating even exists in the first place, that Bungie is throwing people a bone. Because guess what? Bungie has no incentive to create content for people at the very top of the skill bracket because the population of that group is incredibly small. And it's not worth spending any more time than they already do trying to do anything more than what they're doing right now. So save some spoils until you're capped out, run a master, and buy a bunch of weapons if you want some loot, because otherwise, master raids are for the title and the love of the game, and then you're done. Finally, I feel like I've been seeing a lot more seasonal model complaints this season compared to previous burnout complaints, although it's not like, past seasons haven't had their complaints. I'm pretty sure I concluded last season's recap with something along the lines of like, yep, it was a season, or, something like that. The seasonal model has gotten very predictable. The game has gotten very predictable. And as a result, things have been getting stale. This is a thing I've mentioned many times. There's only so many ways to make killing aliens interesting. The core playlists continue just to exist, and seasonal content tends to be the same kind of objectives and activities with a different color of paint on them. As for this season in particular, it started a bit stingier than the previous. It takes 12 umbral energy to focus a weapon at the star chart when you only get 3 energy per expedition. That's kind of tough. But in the second half of the season, people will start to get the upgrade that lets them go for double umbral energy in an expedition, which will help alleviate that problem, even though the second half of the season is when some people tend to stop playing. Deep sight weapon acquisition also started pretty stingy, but in the most recent TWAB update, Bungie just announced that your first focused weapon per week will be deep sight if you have the double perk weapon spoils crew upgrade, and the hidden compartment crew upgrade will now, work properly. So yeah, I don't think I want to dwell on this too much anymore, as this problem is actively being addressed, and maybe we can revisit it down the road if it's not enough, or at the end of the season. The only other issue I could think of is that deep sight weapons aren't on any sort of a knockout system, but these fixes should also help with the pain of that to some degree. The whole 50 ruffians thing, I believe, is getting addressed as far as the title for the season is concerned. We'll review how that goes down at the end of the season. The issue there is just the fact that ruffians are despawning, making the process of completing this triumph very, very slow. There have also been some more overarching complaints that I've been seeing as well about the state of the entire game. For all the love that subclasses have been getting this year and the sandbox has been getting this year, the rest of the game really needs a dose of it too. This will be the biggest problem that Destiny will have for what I imagine will be until after the final shape. The sandbox, subclasses, weapons, armor are all in the modern era, while most of the content in the game is stuck in the Stone Age. There's only a couple of things that can withstand our fury. Everything else is just kind of a slog. And as much as I think Subclass 3.0 has been amazing for the game, it is a double-edged sword, as it has resulted in some of the biggest jumps in power that we've ever seen, making old content even more irrelevant when it comes to combat. I will honestly be shocked if we see any more significant PvE nerfs for the next 2 years at the rate that we're going. I personally experience burnout because I am so strong that nothing gets in my way. It's the same reason that I don't like 6-stacking in control PvP. I don't care about winning when it just becomes that easy and the game turns into the arms dealer strike where we're just fighting for kills. There's no resistance. And for me, the resistance, the fight back, the execution of skill is what satisfies me when I win. I think Bungie needs to start experimenting with some sort of horde mode, endless mode type content, even though, as we just discussed, incentivizing it would be very difficult. I think they should be experimenting with more aspirational content instead of making the grind about getting weapon patterns to weapons that you're never going to craft and titles and seals that you're never going to wear. But most of all, they need to work on bringing the game to current day standards. I wouldn't mind playing all of this old content if it was balanced like Duality. Duality was made with Subclass 3.0 in mind. It's balanced around it. King's Fall Contest Mode isn't even able to hold up to Subclass 3.0. You think the Inverted Spire is gonna fight back? Old content needs to be brought up to par. This isn't World of Warcraft. This isn't Final Fantasy, where a new expansion completely occupies the time of players and they don't need to go play old stuff on old continents or whatever. Destiny's not big enough for that. It needs to have its old content revitalized if it wants any hope of keeping people's attention. This is something we can discuss at length another time, but I think I've said most of what has been on my mind. Anyway, I promise the next video is going to be more fun. This one was a little bit of a downer, so that's my bad. But, you know, thanks for listening anyway, and I will see you next time.